One of the things I love about this season is you guys really you aren't afraid to lean into the passage of time, especially when it comes to like Amy having kids or like the
Yes.
idea that you guys have like been working together for over 20 years now. Like how is it kind of like leaning into that growth as you have grown into these characters around the same amount of time?
It's like we never left. I mean, when it was time, when it's ever been time to come back after cancellations, everybody just crawls back into the same chairs in the same studio, and we're sitting in the same configuration. I felt like we never left, you know?
And I feel like it's so wonderful. I feel like that the best art is when we tap into something that's authentic and true. The fact that I think almost all of us were single when we first met in the 90s, and then to go to each other's weddings, and then like we all had kids. Our kids are grown now. To not let that affect the series, I think would have been a mistake. When we first came back, I said to David X. Cohen, my voice is a little bit deeper now than it was 25 years ago. Do you want me to try to match that? And he was saying, no, I think you should just speak the way you speak now. Because Amy has matured and grown up too. So I think it's been wonderful because there's so much more to explore when your characters can, start to burst out and grow a bit.
Well, speaking of scripts, like speaking to like David and Bill's scripts, it always, especially with the Hulu run, I'm always fascinated by what you guys are going to skewer next. Is it going to be NFTs? Is it going to be Fire Festival? Like, what is it going to be? Like, how is it seeing those scripts and seeing, this modern life reflected through the lens of Futurama?
They're
It's
good at throwing a curveball into everything and at the audience. You couldn't just like do a parody of something. You could do a take on it and everything. But since it's Futurama, the writers have a picnic with anything they tackle, including the nonsense of the time we live in, which is their past. You know,
Yeah, I just think it connects us all as human beings, and I just
yeah,
feel, we all just want to feel connected to one another, which is what our cast feels, and I think that the fandom feels that way too. And we love our fans so much,
yeah,
especially because they're the reason that we're back, that we keep
yep.
coming back. And so it's like you have a very it's just something that we all run towards, I think. And when we tackle these really current issues, it just makes us, even more connected, I think. Like, hey, you're going through what I'm going through.
And speaking of the fans, I mean, we're recording this on the eve of San Diego Comic-Con. Futurama has become a generational thing now. So now you've got fans who were fans back in the 90s. Now they have kids who were fans when it went to Comedy Central or whatever. What are the constants that you notice across the fandom? And what are some of the recent changes you've seen as it's kind of like, been resurrected all these times?
I feel like our fans have always been really intelligent, so much
Yes.
so that our Harvard educated writers, it keeps them on their toes to not make mistakes. I think that's really been a constant. I like that we never kind of dumb down anything for our audience. And if anything, they're always ahead of us a bit. And for me, just personally too, I just feel like being in Futurama has given me such street cred with my kids. Like I'm not so dorky after all since I'm in Futurama.
We meet like thousands of people, if we're going to a show every other week or something. These conventions are growing exponentially. They get bigger and bigger. They add more of them in cities, like the same city will have like two shows a few times a year. And I love that. And we get to meet people, and I love talking to everybody. And you find out how sharp everybody is. I encourage questions, and if I can be helpful in any way, but they just like me to put on a dog and pony show doing the voice,
Dance, monkey dance.
which I'm happy to do.
I really love hearing that we were a part of people's childhoods too.
Yes.
That makes me feel really happy to
Of
know that.
course.
Yeah.
I mean, across, but and you guys have been parts of people's childhoods more than just in Futurama. I mean,
Yeah.
shoot, Billy, you got to be Bugs Bunny. You
Yeah.
know,
And
He's
before
gonna
that, Ren and Stimpy.
yeah, like what is it about, Fry and Farnsworth and Zoidberg and Amy and everybody? Like, what is it about Futurama that really strikes a chord across all of the work that you've done?
I know what it is. Zoidberg knows everything. If it wasn't for Zoidberg, Billy West would be driving a truck full time.
Fair enough. I, I mean, Lauren, I don't know if you want to do your voice.
Oh, absolutely, of course. If it wasn't for Futurama, I don't know where I'd be. I certainly couldn't pay for my kids' college educations, that's for sure.
We're grateful. We're just
We're
a
so
bunch of
grateful.
grateful folks, you know.
Yes, and I love being part of this show so much. It's one of my biggest blessings for sure. Yeah.
Every time Futurama comes back, it feels like it does it with even more creative freedom, or at least less rigid standards and practices, because jumping from network to cable
Right.
and then cable to streaming, how has it been kind of like being it's weird because and it's right there in the name, Futurama. How's it
Yep.
been being at the future of television as it kind of constantly evolves?
It's like the time space show business continuum, you know. It's like I remember back in 1965, I was standing in front of an attraction at the New York World's Fair, and it was called Futurama, and I
Oh,
wanted to ride on it. And little did I know that I was flirting with my future,
yeah.
you know. And I remember how the future was going to be this and it was going to be that, and Futurama, you know, kind of smashed that whole mythos to pieces, and they reconfigured it, which is a beautiful thing to do. That, to me, that's art, you know, the alchemy of physical spaces and the way people are. Yeah, new feeling, new everything.
In terms of like new feelings, we do get some introspective Fry this season. And, we've gotten introspective Fry all throughout the show. How is it kind of like playing to those more vulnerable colors, when he kind of puts the guard down and lets himself kind of be melancholy or be introspective?
I remember recording the last round of stuff, and Fry kind of breaks down a couple of times and gets really emotional where he's crying. And I don't know, when I watch that, it gets me because I'm like that, you know. I mean, if I wasn't silly, I mean, I have to make fun and have silliness about everything, because if I read the news or
Uh,
anything, I'll break down. I'll start crying. So I'm usually kind of like, you know, just to be able to get my mind around certain things. And so to see Fry, like, you know, he's pure. That's what I love about him. He's just
yeah.
pure.
And also the writers are so smart that they know
Yep.
that they wouldn't write something like that unless they knew 110% that Billy could play that, because they know who Billy is, as a person. Yeah, well, we really have to take our hats off to the writers because they make our job
Yes.
so easy, in the sense that when the writing is good, all you have to do is say the line. You don't have to help it in any way.
We get the scripts kind of like the night before,
Oh,
and
Yeah.
and I'll be sitting there, and before I go to bed, I'll be hooting and hollering, laughing,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there'll be something that just like punches me right in the head, in the
Right.
funny bone. And lucky us, you know, that's all I have to say.
Lauren, how about you? I mean, if there's any person in the Planet Express crew that's grown the most from when we first saw them, it's Amy, right? Like,
Aw,
she started out as the party girl, and now she's
yes.
like the mother to a teenage Kifling, whatever
Yes.
that species
I
is.
want to see her keep going too, as far as like, just fielding all of life's challenges as we all get older, and because the biggest leap was from being, single to being married and then having kids, to really think about another being other than yourself. That's giant. That really
Mhm.
makes a person grow up a lot. But then, as Billy and I talk about often, like the phase that we're in right now, are trying to say goodbye to things like our knees and things that don't work quite as well as they used to.
Watching my body slowly betraying me.
God.
You have to just like keep giving your chips in that you used to like easily cash in.
It gets
And
easier to play the professor.
yeah.
I just hope I go quietly in my sleep.
Gosh, like Amy's always had the luxury of like having money be able to help her out, uh,
Yeah.
and of lots of gems. But when you lose, if you lose your looks and if you lose your money, what do you do then? You got to really dig deep. And I think it just like the more pain someone goes through, the more compassionate they become, and smarter, wiser. You know.
Yep. I think
You were
you're right.
talking about, David and everybody kind of writing to your strengths as you've gotten to know David and Claudia and Bill and
Yes.
everybody. Like, what are some of the gags that, you've noticed in the recent seasons of Futurama that really come from having that kind of long-term working relationship and level of intimacy that you wouldn't have had in like 1999. Like what is some of the growth that you've noticed in the writing and getting to know these writers and producers?
Well, I think that we've all grown up together because, we were all single when we first started and we went to each other's, weddings, and then we all had kids together and now the kids are grown. I mean, we grew up together.
Mhm.
And so I think as we grew, they did. And so it just was really nice to be able to, when we go to records, to share what's going on in our lives. And I always felt like I was with family. Like I could tell my castmates anything, and I know that I would have be met with love and like a real like ear that they were really listening. So I think it goes deep, and I think the writing probably sprung from there. Yeah. Billy, I just hogged it. What do you want to say?
Oh, no, no, I was fascinated. When you speak, I listen. And when you laugh, I put my fingers in my ears. Lauren has the loudest laugh. I mean, sonically, it's like that commercial where somebody's holding up a glass, and
When I have to do a scream too, everyone has to get prepared.
yep. I take off the headphones because I'm ready.
What are
God
some of
bless you. Where does that come from out of you? You're so petite.
don't know.
This boom.
I like it.
What are some of your favorite days like going into the booth? Is it when you look at it and you're like, oh, I get to be like, Amy's mom, or you look at and you're like, oh, I get to be like Farnsworth today. Like, what are some of your favorite moments to kind of like get in there and really kind of play in the room?
I like to watch Billy doing a one-person show when he has to do all three characters in one scene, and I get to sit back and relax, and I get to be the audience and just laugh. I love that.
My favorite thing is if I try to formulate, beyond the words, like I get an idea in my head and I'll write it on the script and I'll say, I'm going to lay this on David and see what he thinks.
Aw.
And I can't outguess them or second guess them or out clever them, but I can throw something in that might make them go, leave that in. And when that happens, that's like a huge victory. I feel accomplished and achieved,
And I do love playing Amy's mom. I must say, early on when we were on network TV, they had to clear what I was saying in Chinese to make sure I wasn't saying any swear words, but now nobody cares.
And you were, and they just let it go.
Yeah, they let it go.
Because I even remember them.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do them. I'm not going to do them for you.
I got one more, and I mean, season 12, like what are some of the highlights? I mean, as much as you can, it's always kind of tricky to do this before the premiere. What are some of the big things you're really excited about for viewers to see, at the end of the month when season 12 comes on Hulu?
I think a continuation of the growth of the characters you'll see, and also just the big questions that we're dealing with in current events they tackle. So it'll be nice to be able to see some of those issues with a comedic eye, and maybe something that makes people feel a little bit more hopeful. Yeah.
Well, you've watched some of the episodes.
I have.
But we
Sam?
haven't. So
We
I hope,
haven't.
I hope they look great. Yeah.
Right, but I know a couple of things. I have an inkling about a couple of things. We have a couple of takes on stuff that's new to us now, and there's one where Leela becomes friends with a jealous chatbot.
That's my favorite episode of the season so far.
Really? Okay.
Was it?
Okay, good.
Yeah, because you've got Amy's book club, you've got Fry's book club, you've got Fire or Inferno Festival. Everything is in that episode. You've got the vulnerability with like that Katie brings with Leela in that episode, but you've got Fry trying to get his friends to read the Hardy Boys. So it's